All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Is this mic?
Yeah, no, we're good. We're good.
Are we good?
Yeah, we are good.
Everybody hear me? All right. I mean, it doesn't show the thing.
Yeah, I know.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to Into the Stands, episode 4 now.
Yeah.
It's crazy. We've been doing this for like almost a month now. This week's a really good week of sports. We have MLB playoffs coming up. We've had a great week, NFL Week 4, and we're going to be previewing NFL Week 5. I guess, first starting with baseball, talking about, because, not only is it the sport going into the postseason, but we have probably the biggest news in all of sports, which is Aaron Judge breaking the single season home run record.
It's
with
remarkable
62.
that we
Yeah.
actually get to speak about it.
I know.
It's official.
Yeah, it is.
It's
Happens in the second last day of the season.
I feel like it was weird seeing it in Texas. I mean, the Rangers are pretty bad, but I mean, it as a fan of an opposing team, it was great to finally see it officially happen, and to a well-deserving player, of course. And I mean, I can't wait to see what he gets to do in the playoffs, starting up against. Do they have the wild card? They won the division. Do they have the
second
bye?
seed? Yeah,
They're the second seed, right?
So they'll play winner of Tampa Bay and Cleveland. Yeah, man, Aaron Judge breaking the record. He definitely deserves it. He got a slider inside that he crushed into left field seats. Guy who caught the ball, Texas Rangers fan. From what I'm hearing, he's a pretty wealthy man. So that's kind of a bummer.
Well, we also have to bring up the guy who fell over the stairs.
Oh yeah! Oh my god, that is. Oh man, that was hilarious. I mean, I obviously feel bad if he got injured, which I don't think there's any news on that front. But I mean, it turns out it's actually really smart move to do that because if that ball drops,
you figure maybe like a 25% chance, the ball falls out of that glove, and if you catch it, $2 million, maybe something around there. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, good move.
Look, I'm not gonna judge anybody or because I don't know much about this guy, but it seems like he's a pretty wealthy man, so that's kind of a bit of a bummer. But Aaron Judge seems to. I mean, it's a bit of a bummer. It would have been cool to see a fan who went to the game, out of nowhere, last minute, just to watch a game, and then Aaron ended up catching Aaron Judge's ball and just had the course of his life just changed. I think that would have been cool. But hey, he gets to have a really cool piece of memorabilia to have in his family. Probably the most valuable and most coveted ball in maybe all sports history, honestly.
I have one
has
also
to be. I mean, for the fact that it's owned by a fan.
I mean, Chris, the catch that he made, though, I saw he
Yeah.
boxed a couple people out, but it was really
really easy.
clean. I mean, you never see it like that. I remember
That's
when we were there
insane.
live for Aaron Judge's 60th home run, the absolute just
Mayhem.
fight we saw for that ball. The ball was
Pandemonium.
absolute chaos. But really, there was no question about it. He just caught it straight in his glove, and that was the end of it.
It's crazy. It's like it was staged. It's like he paid off all the people in that section to just let him catch the ball. But yeah, that guy jumping down. I mean, that was definitely coordinated. I mean, that's just hilarious going back and watching that. The fact that it does get dropped. I mean, you get $2 million, maybe a little bit more, because back in Toronto, that ball ended up in the hands of a Blue Jays pitching coach. Or
yeah, that's a very good point. But speaking of the Blue Jays, we have playoff baseball to talk about since the playoffs begin tomorrow from when we're recording this. And let's kick off with the wild card down with the boys from Canada. They're going to play Seattle, a team that
the other team from technically Canada.
Technically Canada in a way.
British Columbia, love that
first
team.
Playoff appearance in what, 21 years?
21
years. Truly remarkable what they've been able to do. I mean, here today we're going to pick, I believe, every postseason series of what we're predicting. I believe.
Every playoff series. The bracket is. I pretty much have the bracket done in my head. At least I pretty much have a good idea because I'm sticking with the same prediction I had for quite a while, honestly. Now, before the season, I predicted a Blue Jays Cardinals World Series. Now I'm gonna change that up a bit. I don't have the Blue Jays making it out of the American League, but I actually, and I guess preview to my prediction, which we'll start with the wild cards. But yeah, I think I got St. Louis in the NL.
I mean, let's just kick it off right away. We got, like I said, Toronto, Seattle. I'll dive in this one first. I love this matchup.
It's
two teams that Seattle you never knew about because there's such a question mark with this team, but I love what the starting pitching has been able to do. And you kick it off with Logan Gilbert, who's been good. Robbie Ray has turned it around. He's been good. and then you trade for Luis Castillo, who is a question mark in a way. You get him in, and he has been probably their best pitcher since the trade
I'd say
deadline.
undoubtedly. Yeah,
I mean,
except that one star in Kansas
except that one
City,
star in
but
Kansas City. Of course, it had to be the Royals, but I don't trust the Blue Jays bullpen. I think it's a mess. I'm going Seattle in 2. I think they make this quick work because of how bad the Blue Jays bullpen is. Maybe they underestimate Seattle a little bit, like maybe the Yankees did in the regular season.
yeah.
So I'm going Seattle in 2, and they get to have an AL West matchup. Chris, what are your thoughts?
No, okay, yeah, no, I think that's a great prediction, and I absolutely think it's not out of the question for sure. I mean, that's a very good matchup. Toronto Blue Jays versus Seattle Mariners. Both teams could easily win it. I'm gonna go with the Jays. I really think the home field advantage for them. The Rogers Center is one of the best stadiums for playoff baseball. One of the best atmospheres. We saw that in 2015 and 2016. That place will rock, really. Like the ground will shake. I mean, you see that replay of that Jose Bautista home run. The camera is just shaking in the air. I mean, which is shaking as that ball is in the air, I should say. Fans going nuts, closed roof. The sound is just even louder than in a normal outdoor stadium. It's fantastic, and I do think they have the advantage when it comes to starting pitching in 2 games. I think Manoah and Gausman is better than Ray Gilbert. I think, Castillo and Gilbert probably, or Ray. I've seen him. If it goes to a 3rd game, then I think it would be Ray versus, I don't know. The Blue Jays have Kikuchi. No,
Not
it's
Kikuchi.
Barrios. But
who
he's
has
been
been
terrible, so.
horrendous. I feel like
But
they have somebody else that we're forgetting about, but I mean they have
Ryu's hurt.
Don't they have Ross
Kikuchi's not good.
Strickland,
Yeah,
who's been good in the
you
playoffs?
kind of got to give it to Barrios, though. He's been used. The guy you paid.
He's been terrible. Did you
But-
see what he did against the
he's-
Yankees a couple
Oh,
years
yeah,
ago? Like,
no.
I mean, he did with the
What
Twins.
he's done all year with the Blue Jays.
He can't win a game in the playoffs at all. I
He
don't
can't win a
know.
game.
It's
You
interesting.
just can't win a game in general. So there's that. But I think the Blue Jays with the home field advantage, with the starting pitching matchup, and the bullpen's not great, but I think they can put it together in a 2-game series against Seattle. I think they'll knock them off. That's just my prediction.
Well, it looks like I'm the tie-breaking vote here, and for my side, I'm going to go with the team that I originally had going into the season, winning the American League, and that's the Toronto Blue Jays. Now, the reason why I'm going with the Blue Jays is because part of what Chris mentioned there is very true. The home field advantage. Toronto sports fans are very passionate. I remember very well when the Raptors made the NBA Finals against the Warriors. Really, such an electric crowd. Great sports fans there. So that's definitely going to play a factor. But besides from that, let's take a look at the teams. 2 teams that are very young and exciting. A lot of young star power there. You're looking at Vlad Guerrero. You're looking at Julio Rodriguez. And, so it's going to be a fun matchup regardless. But, I think that Seattle, they've had a fantastic year. Don't get me wrong, breaking that long playoff drought. But I kind of see Toronto as a team that's kind of like Toronto was what Seattle was a couple years ago. I think that now, Seattle, this is their first year really coming out, making a name for themselves. Whereas, guys like Vladimir Guerrero, not a lot of postseason experience, but, he's starting to get later on in his career, he's starting to get more seasons under his belt. So I think that in that sense, Toronto is the more experienced team. And, like I said, they were my team that I had winning the American League before the season started. Obviously, there's a lot of high expectations for Toronto going into this season. And I think that they're still that talented team, although, once the postseason starts, it's a whole new slate for Toronto. So I think that they'll get off to a good start here. I have Toronto winning in a tight 3-game series, but I think that their experience as well as their talent, I think that they get by Seattle, though it has been a great season for the Seattle Mariners. Don't get me wrong.
So after that good pick, by the way, mentioning Julio and Vlad Guerrero. I completely forgot to mention them, but let's go to the other American League matchup, Tampa Bay and Cleveland. Cleveland, I'll start there real quick. I had no expectations, but they have come out of nowhere. Emmanuel Clase, man, he's ridiculous. It's a lot of fun to watch.
And with Cleveland, it's funny because I actually had them finishing last in the division, and I'll tell you why. Going into the season, I know it's odd because you look at it now, but going into the season, this team had no expectations, man.
They have the Royals,
and but that thing with the Royals, I had a feeling, with the contact with Witt and the Melendez coming up and bringing
Bobby
up young
Wynn,
guys
and when they had Santana.
yeah,
So
well, that
that's
was
fair.
before, and then the young Brady Singer. I've always been a fan of
Brad
I
Keller.
always felt that he was going to
Brad
be
Keller as
breakout
well.
and
He had a
Brady
great
Singer,
season, by the way.
Brad Keller as well. But I always felt Brady Singer was going to break out. He actually did, but the team was just terrible. So I thought they'd finish fourth.
So who do you got?
But
Tampa Bay,
Cleveland finished fifth, or I had them finishing fifth. They won the division. In this series against Tampa Bay, I have Cleveland winning also in 2 games. And here's the thing: I'm a huge believer, at least for I don't know why these wild card games. I think I'm gonna be a huge believer in the home field advantage for these 4 series, and I guess that I might as well have a preview of my next 2 predictions for the wild card series. I'm predicting the to 2 home teams in those series to win as well. I really believe that the Yankees saw it in Cleveland a few years ago, not in 2020. There were literally no fans in the stands, but in 2017. That place is crazy when it's packed. When fans actually go to the games, it's a great crowd. They are pretty passionate fan base. When they actually go to the games, they just for some reason don't. But there are a lot of known Guardians fans who've been watching that team for a very long time and are waiting for that final. Waiting for a World Series championship for the first time in like a million years. Tampa Bay's a very good team. Trust me, I know that as a Yankee fan. And they could very well, like similar to Seattle being Toronto, they could walk into Cleveland and beat them both times. They have pitching. They have a fantastic bullpen. A very good starting pitching. McClanahan's incredible. Rasmussen is insane. Phenomenal. And there's somebody I'm forgetting, but that's the thing with the Rays is you forget all their pitchers, but they're still good.
That's a phenomenal. Can I dive into that real quick?
Yeah.
He made a great point with not knowing many of the Rays players. That's just the stereotype they have with not having a lot of money.
And that's kind of Cleveland's thing now.
Now it is. But you wouldn't think I want to mention something with Cleveland here. You wouldn't think. Well, how long has it been? Like a year, 2 years since they've traded Lindor to the Mets? A year or two since they traded Lindor to the Mets? You wouldn't think with the squad they have and how young they are that they would be at this point already. And they have shocked a lot of people. But I want to dive into this series now because, the name we forgot to mention, Tyler Glasnow's back.
Yeah, no, that's another one. Now I don't know how he fits in. Like I don't know what they would do.
I think you start him instead. It's like in a 3-game series. I would start him game 2. I would start McClanahan game 1. Yeah. I love what Rasmussen has been able to do in key games. Too. He's been known to that guy. He doesn't go really long into games, which actually works for the Rays here. He doesn't go long into games. He has the stereotype of getting the ground ball. He reminds me a little bit of some Marcus Stroman-esque with going for the ground ball. And in a place, they're playing in Cleveland, right?
They're playing in Cleveland.
So not many balls really fly out of there. Not from what I've seen recently. I feel like that's going to be a big advantage for Rasmussen. And besides, I bet not many Rays fans would go to that series in Tropicana anyway. I mean, that's what they. I mean, did you see what didn't they play a series against the Astros? And not many people were there.
I'm not even kidding. I think that series against the Astros. I think I was seeing like some
I saw some of the greatest
and like little like school field trips there. I could have swore I saw some like color coordinated, some like a bunch of yellow shirts and like a bunch of green shirts in the stands. Like,
well, I'm going with as you would say, the yellow and green shirts in this case. I'm going with Tampa Bay in 3. I love the Rays, and I feel like they're that sleeper team that can go all the way, hinting at that. But I feel like they are a team that can make a lot of noise with a lot of, like I mentioned, not knowing many players. Not many people probably know who, like Vidal Brujan, Yandy Diaz, Wander Franco.
Oh, I know who Vidal Brujan is.
Well,
the show.
Well, yeah, play the show. I mean, people might know who Randy Rosarena is for that history.
I don't know who that is. No.
But
only
you got Manuel Margot, who's been solid, and DH. Like they have a team that's really interesting and well built for having no money in essence. So I'm gonna go with Tampa Bay in 3. Yeah. Colin, what do you got?
I have Tampa Bay in 2, and I think that Tampa Bay is the more experienced team in this scenario. I think that although Cleveland once again surprised a lot of people, all credit goes to them. I just think that Tampa Bay has been here a lot of times. I think that Tampa knows how to control that environment. I don't think that Cleveland, although like you said, they're going to have a great crowd, good crowd noise. I think that Tampa Bay is not going to be bothered by that. I think that they'll go in there and win in 2 games. Now, granted, me saying that Tampa Bay is going to sweep them means it's going to be a runaway series because it's only 2 games. I mean, we were so used to the wild card format where teams would, it was just 1 game elimination. But in this 2-game style, just think of it as like a no normal weekend set. A team could easily win 2 games just back to back. So it's not saying that Cleveland's going to get absolutely, demolished by Tampa Bay in my prediction. I just think that, I think Tampa Bay will go in there and do their business. So I do have both Tampa Bay and Toronto go into the ALDS out of the American League.
I think that's a great point. You bring up that Cleveland may not be phased. I'm sorry, Tampa Bay will not be phased by the home crowd of Cleveland. Because, you go back a few years ago, 2019, they won the wild card game in Oakland with that with that huge Oakland crowd. So they're not phased by it. They're experienced in the postseason.
And
Cleveland's
also,
the youngest
even
team.
if Tampa Bay was the home team, when has Tampa Bay ever had a great home field advantage? They never had it. So it's not a big deal for them.
Yeah, and, so Cleveland's also a very young team. They're not as experienced, but I just think Cleveland's going to win. I think the home field advantage will kind of have an effect for them, but also the fact that I like Bieber, I like Cal Quantrill, and Tristan McKenzie even. He's fantastic.
Tristan McKenzie's very interesting to me.
Yeah, I like him in a game.
I feel like, I don't know, I'm a little bit like mixed on Tristan McKenzie. I don't know how good he's that young guy who I feel like should go game 1 for me.
I think it's going to be a really close series. I think it actually, if you want to ask me, I think it'll go to, I don't know if I said what I think it was going to go to. I think it's going to go to 3 games.
Yeah, you did.
I think it's going to go to 3.
Yeah.
I think it should be Shane Bieber game 1, McKenzie game 2, and then Cal Quantrill game 3. I think it's going to be a very close, hard-fought series from both sides. I think it's going to actually be a bunch of one-run games. I think one of them, I think we saw that a few weeks ago, Tampa Bay series in Cleveland. A Tampa Bay series against Cleveland in Cleveland a few weeks ago. I think 3 of the games were like 2-1 Cleveland's favor. So it's going to be a hard fought series. But I like Cleveland as an underdog team now. We'll talk about what I think is going to happen when they face the Yankees. But I like this Cleveland team, and I think I've kind of underrated them a little too much and underestimated them a little too much prior to the season. I think I've hopefully given them their credit now because they deserve it. Making it this far is tremendous, even if they face the underwhelming White Sox and Twins a lot.
So let's keep moving on to the National League. We have the St. Louis Cardinals, a team that's very interestingly built as well, not having the most well-known starting pitching, against a team that has underachieved the last couple of years. Philadelphia.
Mickey Mouse playoff team. Or not Mickey Mouse, I won't say that, but the most they earned it. They played very good baseball, but they lost. How many games did they lose? Right?
Too many.
And they the only reason they made it is just because Milwaukee lost to Miami like 4 times.
I think it was like 4 or 5 or something.
Yeah,
or 4 or 6.
But
yeah. I'm gonna make my pick here. I am going with the Cardinals because I feel like they can make some noise. They can. Goldschmidt's been good. They've had some pieces be good. Their starting pitching is very interestingly built. We have Wainwright, Michaelis, and Jordan Montgomery. Yeah. 2 guys who've had a lot of playoff experience, and Michaelis, I don't even know if he's played in a playoff game. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah.
I think it was a year or 2 ago.
2019.
So I feel like the Cardinals, they've been here before. I feel like they have the experience of playing in this. So I'm going to go with the Cardinals in 3. I feel like the Phillies do win a game. I feel like it would be game 2. My prediction for game 2 would be Zach Wheeler winning. And then the Phillies get blown out because who else would they use? I mean, their starting pitching is not deep. So I feel like for that reason, I feel like the Cardinals do win it in 3.
Yeah. I'll let Colin go, but real quickly, I'll say I think if they're going to win a game, it'd be game 1, honestly.
Well, actually, Chris, I'd like you to go first.
Oh, you like me to go first? All right. Well, I was going to go with the same prediction as Robbie because, I feel St. Louis, and I'll just say that I said it before. St. Louis is my prediction to be the National League team. I said that before. National League team in the World Series. But I have them winning in 3. I think Philly's going to take game 1. I really like Aaron Nola versus, I guess, Wainwright, I guess it would be. Aaron Nola is such a good pitcher, and he's incredible. Almost no hit Houston the other day. I look, I'll tell you, this is always like one series where if the Yankees get eliminated, I'll root for whoever wins that National League series. So last year it was Brewers, Braves. 2019 it was Cardinals, Braves. Or actually, no, it was the Nationals I was rooting for if the Yankees got eliminated. So that was good. And then last year the Braves winning, that was awesome as well from a Yankee fan perspective. This is a series that I'm looking at. I want both. I want one of these two teams to go all the way because not only are they fairly underdogs, but I just, as a Yankee fan, I kind of like both of these teams. I really would love the idea of Philadelphia going all the way. I think that'd just be. I know you wouldn't like that, Rob, but I think that'd just be incredible.
Seeing another NL East team, like I remember last year,
God.
watch the Braves.
3 NL East
was
teams
an absolute nightmare.
3 NL East
So,
teams winning the past 4 World Series. None of them the Mets.
I don't know. It's interesting to see a team like that, but you
And
can continue.
I think also is because Philly, this team is so like, and you depth gets you through the regular season. It doesn't help you in the postseason. This team is so just shallow, I guess you could say, because they have nothing. I mean, they have absolutely nothing. They have Kyle Schwarber and Bryce Harper in the offense, and then like Bryson Stott, and then the pitching is just 2 guys, and then the bullpen is also like 2 guys, Alvarado, and then like that's it, honestly, because D-Rob has been terrible, I think, unfortunately. And I remember he's been giving up walk-offs, and then some other I'm trying to Knable, I don't know about what's up with him, but like I know Alvarado's like their only bullpen arm. That'd still be a tremendous story though. But I got St. Louis winning the series in 3 games. I think that team is too good to not win the series at home.
Are you guys ready for this? So in a wild card format, there's always going to be upsets, in a best of 3 game series. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pick the Philadelphia Phillies. And I know that's going to sound like a shock. And I'm going to pick the Philadelphia Phillies to win in 2 games. Now listen to me, guys. So Robbie says he likes Zach Wheeler. He thinks they'll win game 2. Chris says he likes Aaron Nola. He thinks they can win game 1. Now who says they can't win both of these games? Now Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola, 2 guys who up until this point have never pitched in the postseason. I think they're going to be ready for the moment, and I think they're going to have 2 huge games. And Chris, you said it yourself. The Phillies are not a perfect baseball team by any stretch of the imagination. But in a format like this, do you really need to be perfect? I think that if this is a 5 or 7 game series, I think that the Cardinals win this series. I think that, they're the better team, over the course of 5 or 7 game series. But in a format such as this, I really like what the Phillies have to offer. Yeah. You have those 2 dominant starting pitchers. You have Kyle Schwarber, who is behind only Aaron Judge in the league in home runs. You have Bryce Harper, who's another guy who's going to be out for revenge. You remember when Bryce Harper first originally left for the Phillies? His old team, the Washington Nationals, then proceeded to go win the World Series. And Bryce Harper has not been to the postseason since then. I think Bryce Harper is going to want some bit of revenge. I think Bryce Harper is going to be hungry. And for the Cardinals themselves, this is kind of the end of an era for them. This is the last season for Yadier Molina. It's the last season for Albert Pujols. I just think that, in a scenario like that, I think that Philadelphia might be more hungry. I think that it's kind of like the last dance for the Cardinals. I think that there kind of be some sad feelings there. I think that Philly comes down and stuns them. And, Philly has been a team that they, up until the Mariners broke their drought, they had the second longest playoff drought in baseball. They haven't been there since 2011. So like I said, for my upset of the bracket and really for my whole postseason bracket, I'm going Philadelphia Phillies in 2 games to shock the world.
I'd love that. I really would.
I don't know, man. It's going to be interesting. But let's go to another interesting series, a series that was avoidable if the Mets could win a game against Atlanta, but they decided to fumble the bag over the weekend. It's the Mets and the Padres, a series that at Citi Field I didn't think was even going to happen back in June, but here we are. After the trade deadline the Padres have and the pieces they've added, they still can't win a division, not even make it remotely close. So for that reasoning, because the Mets starting pitching is absolutely ridiculous, even though the bullpen has been a total dumpster fire recently, other than Edwin Diaz, I'm going the Mets in 3. They're going to win it on Sunday night. It's going to be very, the environment at Citi Field is going to be great. I mean, it's an interesting situation for the Mets. I mean, people thought, yeah, we're going to win the division. We're going to win it convincingly. Atlanta, what else do they have? I mean, until Ronald Acuna came back and decided to pop off a little bit. So I feel like the Mets should win this series in 3 games. I like Scherzer. I don't know about DeGrom or Bassett. I feel like one of them should win their game. I mean, I think Bassett does have playoff experience, but not much.
Yeah,
with
Oakland.
Yeah. And then DeGrom pitched in the playoffs when the Mets last made it 5 or 6 years ago.
And then Scherzer's got incredible.
And then Scherzer's just Scherzer. I mean, if they use him right, they should win game 1 easily. But you never know. Chris, what do you got?
This is tough, man. I'll say the Mets are going to win. I'll say it's in 3 games as well. But honestly, that's really because I think their offense will come alive, and being at home, I think San Diego's offense might shut down a bit. I like Machado. Soto's obviously been underwhelming. Josh Bell has been good, but I just don't think there's enough to win a series in Citi Field against that three-headed monster of Mets rotation. I really like San Diego's pitching. I think it's better than the Mets. Josh Hader though, that worries me because even though I think he started to pick it up a little bit, he was very underwhelming since coming over from Milwaukee. But I really like that. They also kind of have a three-headed monster in a way that they're going to be sending at the Mets: Yu Darvish, Blake Snell, and Joe Musgrove. But I don't know, man. That's tough. But I'm gonna say the Mets sneak by. I'm gonna say it's 3 games. I'm gonna say they win games. I'm gonna say game 1, Scherzer pitches very well. In game 3, because I think you'd go to Bassett in game 2. I'm gonna say DeGrom really picks it up since he's been kind of struggling recently as well. And I think you're gonna win him with Max Scherzer and Jacob DeGrom.
So there's going to be no drastic change in prediction for me this time around. I'm also going to go with the Mets in 3 games. And the Mets have obviously had a very well-documented rough end to the season. There's a lot of high expectations. Even somehow the Mets win 100 games, as Robbie clearly knows, still the fan base is not very happy. But I do think that the Mets are going to have a good series here. You obviously have DeGrom and Scherzer. I think that although, they may not do great against the Dodgers in a potential NLDS matchup, I think that this is kind of, a signature moment for them. I think they win that game free in Citi Field, be a great atmosphere, be a great moment. I think that overall they're the better team. The Padres had a lot of high expectations when they originally traded for Juan Soto, but now with Fernando Tatis out, it really has not been what they expected it to be. Maybe the Padres are more of a player in the next couple seasons for sure when all those guys come back and are healthy. But as of right now, I think the New York Mets also do win in 3 games. Now, I think before we wrap up for baseball, we should all get into our World Series predictions. Chris, how about you lead it off?
Well, so we got the ALCS. I do have the New York Yankees beating the Cleveland Guardians, and I'm gonna, you know what? I might as well say it. Because I want to pick a Cinderella story. What do I have to defend this? Absolutely nothing. I'm gonna say the Blue Jays beat the Astros because why not? Why not? So we're gonna have a Blue Jays Yankees ALCS, and I'm gonna say the Yankees beat them in 6 games. I think Toronto's gonna take 2. Somehow at home. And I think the Yankees are going to go to the World Series out of the American League. In the National League, I'm going to have the Cardinals facing the that's right. Yeah, no, yeah. And listen, the Atlanta Braves, if anything, look, I love that team. They're phenomenal. They could very well win it all. But I'm just sticking with St. Louis because they were my preseason predictions. So I think you already know what I'm going to say.
Fair.
Out of the Mets and Dodgers, you know what? I know I said I only have 1 Cinderella story. I'm going to go 2. The Mets are going to beat the Dodgers. Because you know something? The Dodgers, you want to talk about Cleveland playing a lot of bad teams. The Dodgers, a lot of games against Colorado and Arizona. That's really, I mean, if you add those up and take away those games, I should say, really, and add some more wins for the Mets, I don't think they're, I mean, all right, the Dodgers are clearly a better team than the Mets. But the Mets have actually historically beaten the Dodgers pretty well in playoffs, recent memory as well, in recent years as well, and when the Mets have been in the playoffs. And I just think the Mets have that potential to be a team, at least for the first 2 series of the playoffs, to get past not only the Padres, but the Dodgers. And I think, in terms of wins, you want to go by regular season wins. I mean, you take away those games against the Diamondbacks, a lot of them, I feel like they just added wins at the very end of the season. I don't think the Mets are that much worse of a team than them, honestly, or
That's
that they
fair.
can't, or that it's like impossible, like as if it's the Phillies who are playing the Dodgers, right? I think the
Right.
Mets can walk into LA, win a game, win 2 at home. I think the Mets beat the Dodgers. So you got a Mets Cardinals NLCS rematch of 2006. I think similar to 2006, St. Louis will take this one. I think they're going to the World Series to face the Yanks. And I think they're going to take the World Series in 7 games. They're going to go to 7 games. They're going to win on the mound at Yankee Stadium. And
True last dance type of thing.
Yeah.
Aren't we?
And the Cardinals are going to be your World Series champions for this year.
Hard to imagine someone picking the Cardinals with the team they have, but my predictions,
prediction.
I'll keep. Hey, I respect you keeping your predictions though. So my
Stick it
series
to
was Yankees and the Rays. Upset number 1, I think the Rays win this in 5. I feel like the Rays pitching is so unpredictably good for some reason, and we see what they can do. I mean, seeing Shane McClanahan in person, he's not fair when he's healthy. He is when he's healthy. And Tyler Glasnow has been known to kill the Yankees for some reason. So I'm going to go with the Rays in 5. Other series is Houston, Seattle, another upset. I'm going with the Cinderella story of the Mariners. I feel like they're the red hot team right now. They've played phenomenal baseball with sort of like Tampa Bay with a lot of people that they don't know who the heck they are, especially in the bullpen.
Yeah.
But I love that starting pitching. I think Verlander does win game 1, but then the Mariners win the next 3. I think they win it in 4. And then Mariners and the Rays. Well, one Cinderella story has to go on. I'm going to go with Tampa Bay because they've been here before. The Mariners have, I believe, little to no playoff experience other than Luis Castillo. So I'm going with the Rays winning the American League. National League, I went with the Cardinals and the Braves. The Braves sweep. I feel like the Braves are too good to not to sweep or not get swept by the Cardinals. I feel like the Braves just have a deep enough team that they can prove that, like, yeah, we're still really good and we're relevant and we won the division. They deserve to win the division after the series with the Mets.
Yeah.
100, 203 wins for the Braves. You deserve to win a division. So I'm going to go with the Braves there. And the Mets and the Dodgers. A rematch of a few years ago when the Mets made the World Series, 7 years ago now? 7 years ago, I believe it is. And I'm flipping the script I am wearing the Mets shirt. I still can't pick them. I'm going with the Dodgers. I feel like the Dodgers, they are that one team that doesn't lose in the NLDS. I feel like they have
they lose in the NLDS.
They have lost in the NLDS before. I understand that. But I feel like they just have they're just too good.
Yeah,
I mean, Mookie Betts has been good. They just have the squad that can beat everyone. I mean, Freddie Freeman has killed the Mets, so I feel like he would absolutely kill us. But I'm going to Dodgers, and then Dodgers, Braves. We've seen this one before, and I am flipping the script again. Well, sort of. The Dodgers win over the Braves in 7. I feel like the Dodgers actually look good for the first few games and then don't absolutely want to destroy themselves. I feel like the Dodgers make it in 7, and then we've seen this matchup before in 2020, the Dodgers and the Rays, a matchup that is very interesting on itself. I'm going Dodgers in 6 to win it all this year.
Such a boring World Series. No, I'm playing with you, but it's just at least with Houston going there. No, sorry, I'll get to you. I'll let you go, Colin, in just a second. At least with Houston, they're the ones who cheated a few years ago. It'd be that rematch. Tampa Bay, that'd be such a boring World Series, but I respect it.
So 6 of my 8 final teams are from the East Division, so let's get into it. So in the Yankees-Tampa Bay series that I predicted, I think the Yankees win pretty easily in this one. I think they win in 4 games. The reason why is because, I just can't see Tampa Bay beating them twice. I really do think that eventually the Yankees have to get over some. If the Yankees want to really get over that hump and get to the top, they're going to have to beat some of these teams that they've lost to. You're going to have to beat Tampa Bay. You're going to have to beat Houston, which I'm going to get into later. But I do think the Yankees win this series. They're going to have a home field advantage. I think that's going to be big. But moving on to the other series, Toronto Blue Jays versus the Houston Astros. I do, once again, like I said, I like Toronto. I think that Toronto pushes them to the brink. I think Chris picked Toronto in his series. I'm going to say Toronto loses in 5, though. I just think that Houston overall is more experienced. But I think this is kind of the series where Toronto shows that they are for real. They were my original World Series pick. Obviously, it hasn't been the season that we thought it was going to be for them. But I think that they still, go out in a respectable manner. Now, my Cinderella story over in the National League, the Philadelphia Phillies, I think it stops there. I think that the Braves sweep them in 3 games. I like Atlanta's team to defend the World Series champions. In my predicted scenario, Philadelphia had a good run, but I do think Atlanta takes them down there. Mets and Dodgers, much like how Robbie was saying, you really can't pick against the Dodgers. I think the Dodgers win that in 4 games. Once again, great season for the Mets. Really, after missing the playoffs for a lot of years, I think that a lot of Mets fans, still can hang their heads high. Maybe next year for the Mets, but I think that the Dodgers go forward. So my ALCS, Yankees versus Astros. None of you guys, I believe, picked this in the ALCS, but this is kind of a matchup that many Yankees fans have been waiting for. And, hopefully the Yankees can get over the top. And I say that they will. I think the Yankees beat Houston in 6 games. And I also want to bring to attention sort of a trend that has happened here in the American League over the past 5 years. So in 2017, the Houston Astros won the American League. Then in 2018, it was the AL East Red Sox. Then in 2019, it once again was the Astros. And in 2020, it was the AL East Rays. And then in 2021, it was the Astros. So I think this trend kind of repeats itself. And this time it's a different American League East team. It's the New York Yankees that go to the World Series. And, just eventually, I think the Yankees have to get over this hump. I think that they played Houston a lot of times. That both teams know each other very well. But I think that this is finally the year the Yankees can get over that top. I say that they beat Houston in 6 games, finally going to that first World Series in 2009. Where they play the winner of Braves-Dodgers. And this is going to be a very good series once again. Both of these teams, obviously, it was the NLCS last year. I think that, though, the Dodgers win this time around. I think the Dodgers win in 6 games. They were my original pick before the season started to win the World Series, and I have them going to the World Series. In a potential matchup, which I'm sure the MLB would love to see for ratings, New York Yankees versus Los Angeles Dodgers, about as star-studded of a matchup as you can get. And, it'd be an entertaining series for sure. I don't believe, when was the last time we saw Yankees and Dodgers in the World Series? I think it was like back in the 50s.
The 70s.
Yeah, 70s. I think that there would be a lot of buzz surrounding that matchup. I feel like it's bound to happen with how, these two teams have been, really at the top of baseball for the past couple of years. And I think Yankees-Dodgers does happen, New York versus LA. Unfortunately for the Yankees, I do think the Dodgers win this series, and I have them winning pretty quickly. I have them winning in 5 games. I'm sticking with my preseason prediction. I do think the Dodgers are the best team in baseball. They lost to the Braves last year, but the Braves had a phenomenal run. The Braves were really the hottest team in baseball. I think that the Dodgers overall are the best team in baseball, and I think they'll prove that here. I think the Dodgers captured their second World Series in 3 years, and the Dodgers beat the Yankees in 5.
Does Joey Gallo get a hit in that series?
I think he does for revenge. I do. Kind of like a Michael Purcell moment against the Yankees Rays. I think we see that. Joey Gallo gets his revenge. And Joey Gallo revenge this series. I mean, either way, he would get a ring. So he would. Be good for Joey Gallo.
Yeah. The Joey Gallo series.
But I think we've talked enough about baseball. Let's keep it in the Empire State. NFL, very interesting weekend once again. We'll kick it off with the 2-2 New York Jets. That's very weird to say, actually. But they went out and beat Pittsburgh with another miraculous fourth quarter, 24-20. The return of Zach Wilson was an interesting one because he only had a 50% pass accuracy, 18 of 36, but he did throw for over 250 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions that were it's an interesting return for Zach Wilson. I think I believe over half of his incompletions were getting rid of the ball like on the run, like just getting rid of it, throwing out of bounds. A lot of the passes were like that due to the line being absolutely destroyed. But the best play of that game, Colin, I think we've seen this one before. I'm calling it the Empire Special. If you don't know, the Philly Special was ran by the Eagles in the Super Bowl, and the Jets did it with Garrett Wilson getting an end around, a flip to Braxton Berrios, and a phenomenal pass to Zach Wilson, which ended up in the first touchdown for the Jets on the day. They went on to win 24-20 against the Steelers, who were using Kenny Pickett for the first time, and he actually didn't look bad, even though, like Zach Wilson, he threw an interception on his first pass. And Sam Darnold, by the way, he did the same thing. But very interesting game for the Jets. They go to 2-2. The Patriots are 1-3. They're on their third string quarterback, just to keep it in the division real quick, and they went out and almost beat the Packers, which is kind of hilarious because I believe a lot of people thought this was going to be a blowout with Brian Hoyer, and a similar moment with like a Kenny Pickett type of moment where Bailey Zapp just comes in and does decent enough to keep them in the game. But yeah, an interesting weekend for the division, but we'll deep dive into one more thing in a moment. But Colin, the Giants, man, what a weekend they had.
I can't believe what I'm seeing, to be honest with you. 3-1 New York Football Giants. And it was, once again, as all basically the Giants' victories this season, very ugly win. It was definitely one of the weirdest Giants games I remember watching. And the reason why we'll get into right now. So, at the end of the third quarter of this game, Daniel Jones gets hit on a sack. He's injured. So, the Giants decide we're going to use Tyrod Taylor for the rest of the game. And Tyrod Taylor comes in, he actually threw a pass, I believe, an interception on his first pass. I had a lot of high expectations for Tyrod Taylor, but he was making plays with his legs, and then out of nowhere, he gets a concussion. So the Giants now bring Daniel Jones on a hurt ankle back out onto the field because Daniel Jones had the headset connected with Mike Kafka, so they needed someone out there to be able to communicate the offensive plays. So they had Daniel Jones lined up as a decoy at wide receiver on a bad ankle so that Saquon Barkley could take snaps out of the Wildcat. I mean, really that was the last thing I was expecting in this game. But Saquon Barkley at quarterback did pretty good. He didn't have to throw a pass, but without a quarterback for the last 8 or 10 minutes of this football game, the New York Giants still won. And granted, Chicago Bears offense, one of the kind of worst we've seen in a while. It's not necessarily the most impressive victory you're going to get. But still, regardless, Brian Dable continues to impress me. Players had said that during that moment when all his quarterbacks went down, there really was no concern. He just instantly went to draw no place for Saquon Barkley in the Wildcat. And that's really something that the Giants have not seen at the head coaching position for a while. A guy who can, think quick on his feet, make those adjustments. And I'm really liking what I'm seeing from Brian Dable. Now, Daniel Jones, it's said that he is expected to play in London against the Packers. I'm not sure how effective he's going to be because I do remember very well when Daniel Jones hurt his ankle, I believe a couple seasons ago, They sat him for a game for Colt McCoy, and then he came back against the Cardinals, and he really was not able to move in that pocket. I believe Hassan Reddick had about 5 sacks on that day. That was a game where Daniel Jones got kind of dominated. But regardless, the Giants are 3-1. And actually, just news that broke earlier today, they re-signed Landon Collins, a former guy who was a big part of that 2016 playoff run. And I'm a big Landon Collins fan. At one point, he really was one of the best safeties in the league. Obviously, he's not playing at that level anymore, but I think he's a good fit for that Wink Martindale defense. Chris, how about those New York Giants?
Unbelievable. Now, I was actually at Yankee Stadium attempting to see Aaron Judge hit number 62. But watching the highlights, I mean, I did not know what I was watching, man. I thought I thought I was watching some type of little league football type, like 10-year-old football. Like that was insane. That last play at the end was just hilarious.
45 seconds that went on.
Unbelievable. Putting Saquon Barkley at quarterback.
And Saquon Barkley leading the league in rushing yards, but also I saw a stat. Saquon Barkley has more rushing yards than the entirety of 21 NFL teams. Just once again, phenomenal he's been doing. I hope he can keep it up. Just really great to see as a fan.
It's like Daniel Jones, 2 rushing touchdowns. The injuries from both of them. Putting Saquon Barkley at quarterback. I mean, the last play, it's like the type of thing you'd see out of a movie, like a comedy film or something. Yeah, it's crazy.
That's how the Giants are winning games now. Big game against actually the next 2 weeks they play the Packers and the Ravens. We're really going to find out a lot about this team from that point forward because it's a lot of high expectation or a lot of good feelings right now. But if the Giants lose these next 2 games, I think they're going to kind of come back down to reality to a degree. But hey, maybe you win one of these 2 games. That's a big catalyst for the rest of the season. So I think these next 2 games against the Packers and Ravens are going to be huge for the rest of the year.
So let's keep going with our week review. If there's any game I want to look at real quick, Baltimore did it again. And what I mean by that is I believe I saw a stat yesterday. They have been losing for a total of 14 seconds and are 2-2. How is that possible? Other than being in Baltimore. But Baltimore went out and did it again. They lost to Josh Allen and the Bills, who looked not awe-inspiring at all. Like, not the team you thought you'd be seeing out of Buffalo for how good they are. But they went out and beat Baltimore. Another game I want to look at real quick. Las Vegas won a game, finally. They beat the Broncos, who they look like they have no idea what they're doing at points. They went out and Vegas won 32-23. Derek Carr, not awe-inspiring, but the running game, oh my goodness. That running game, man. If only imagine Saquon Barkley like that week 1 game back over again for over 150 plus yards. You got to see that with Josh Jacobs, who now granted, did Vegas really deserve to win this game? Kinda. I mean, Denver scoring 7 points in the second half. I mean, you really could beat anyone if that game's remotely close. That you can really beat anyone, only allowing 7 points in the second half. But I mean, it's been an interesting weekend. And one more game I want to note before I hand this back to Colin. Geno Smith and the Seahawks went out and beat Detroit. Geno Smith, by the way, for a quick stat, leads the league in QBR and passing yards. How is this possible? But it's a very shocking revelation being a former Jet actually doing good for once. Not something you usually see. He went 23 of 30 for 320 yards and 2 touchdowns, and also ran for 1 on 7 for 49. So he looked great. Neither team wanted to play defense. Over 1,000 combined yards. Jared Goff had a solid game as well. 26 of 39 for 378 yards and 4 touchdowns and 1 interception. But it's been a very interesting week. Colin, do you have a game that you want to highlight real quick?
I actually do have one I want to mention. That's the game that happened in Philadelphia between the Jaguars and the Eagles. So, the Jaguars came into this game as a 2-1 football team. Doug Peterson is making his, return in Philadelphia. He got a nice, standing ovation from the crowd, obviously. The only head coach to ever bring that franchise to Super Bowl. But the Jaguars, despite losing, that's one of the more impressive losses you can really have. They were up 14-0 in the first half. Really looked like they had Philadelphia rattled. There was really bad conditions with the rain in that game in Philadelphia. The Eagles ended up winning 29-21. But just still, really, I'm liking what I'm seeing out of this Jacksonville Jaguars team. And I don't think a lot of people saw this coming. Now, granted, I did think they were going to be a better football team with Doug Peterson. I think that Doug Peterson is obviously a huge upgrade over Urban Meyer. I think anyone would be an upgrade over Urban Meyer. But I think that really just once again shows how much Urban Meyer was holding this football team back. Because Trevor Lawrence, he looked like possibly the worst starting quarterback in the NFL last year. And he's been putting together a pretty good season for himself. And I think that's great to see because he was a guy coming into the NFL who many people thought was, surefire. He was going to be a star QB right out the gate. But he had that rough first year. But now he's starting to piece it together. And that Jacksonville defense, guys on the front seven like Josh Allen, a lot of guys there who I really like that defense. I like what Jacksonville is doing. And I think that looking at this AFC South, it's really wide open. I mean, Indianapolis, we're going to get into their Thursday night game later, but they have not been very inspiring. Houston looks like they're tanking right now. And Tennessee, I mean, they're 2-2, but I'm not really impressed. I mean, would it be that far out of the realm of possibility to say that Jacksonville could be a contender for this division? I mean, what do we think?
I mean, I'll start with that. I don't know. I mean, that division is an absolute train wreck. They are running themselves over with an 18-wheeler every time they touch the field, other than Jacksonville. I mean, have you seen what Houston's done? Davis Mills is not bad. He is getting killed by Houston. I mean, he looks decent. I mean, he almost had more passing yards than Zach Wilson. He threw for just under 250 yards and 2 touchdowns. Damian Pierce looks solid, but he's getting no help. So I feel like with Houston, quick comment on them, they're not awe-inspiring at all, much like some of the other teams in this division. But you have to look at Houston's, like, what are they trying? What's their end game other than the first pick? Are they even trying to win anymore? You re-signed all your veteran players from last year back in free agency, which was a very interesting move by Houston. They went out and didn't really sign many players. They drafted Derek Stingley at 3, which was an interesting pick as well. And then drafting Kenyon Green with the other first-round pick, which, by the way, he actually looks kind of decent. But I don't know what to think about Houston. Indianapolis, we'll get into them later. Tennessee, Ryan Tannehill, once again, not awe-inspiring. They haven't really been able to do much. I mean, Derrick Henry kind of carried them to beat. I believe he carried them to beat. Yep, he did. Well, sort of. He 22 for 114 and a touchdown on 5.5 yards to carry. Ryan Tannehill, under 150 passing yards, that's not winning you many football games. I mean, Indianapolis is imploding on itself. But at the end of the day, like, what are they trying to do? I don't know, man. But one more game I want to look at. The Browns. I mean, this is the battle of the teams that have choked recently between the Atlanta Falcons and the Cleveland Browns, who, if you don't remember, 2 weeks ago lost within 2 minutes, allowing 14 points to the New York Jets. And they did it again. They lost 23-20 to the somehow 2-2 and tied for division leading Atlanta Falcons. I don't think any of us predicted this. Watching live or eventually viewing it, or us here in the studio. No one predicted this. No one thought Marcus Mariota was going to do anything. Drake London's looked decent enough to be like a competent receiver. But the reason they won this game, their defense looked good. You never really say that with Atlanta anymore. You always think like, yeah, their defense is a mess. They're not really going to do much. And you really don't think like, yeah, we can win a game with our defense. That's not entirely true. I mean, both of their touchdowns were on the ground. Cordell Patterson, I believe he just got injured, is good. The other guys you have, not really that crazy. I mean, you're not actually no. Drake London didn't have a good game, by the way. But you're throwing the ball to Olivier Zaccheaus, is your number 1 targeted receiver from that game. Olivier Zaccheaus, who went 2 for 55. Not on. I mean, they're an interesting bunch. I want to see if they can actually throw to Drake London and Kyle Pitts. I don't know why they're not doing it, but no. Do you have any other games you want to highlight real quick?
Well, I think it's also important because this is probably the biggest storyline to come out of this week. I think we should somewhat address the Tua Tagovailoa situation. So, obviously Thursday Night Football, Bengals versus Dolphins. The Dolphins are 3-0. The Bengals looking to bounce back. And Tua Tagovailoa, that game against the Bills a couple weeks ago, he went down with it, or he actually got taken out at halftime for what looked like, a concussion. They said it was a back injury. You could see him kind of clearly stumble, but yet he still was clear to play Thursday Night Football, and he got sacked, got hit on the head again. And it was a really scary moment, but thankfully it seemed like Tua Tagovailoa is going to be somewhat okay. He's not going to be playing this week against the Jets, obviously, for obvious reasons, but it seems like he should be able to get back on his feet soon. But this has really raised, a lot of concern of how the NFL has handled their concussion protocols. And obviously a moment like that was very scary. Thankfully, it doesn't look like it's going to be that bad for Tua, but I mean, a lot has come into question recently. The Miami Dolphins have been under fire as of late for how they've been handling their team doctors, clearing them to play. I want to get your guys' thoughts on that whole entire situation, how you think the NFL handled that, and how they should go going forward with concussions.
It was scary to see it live. I mean, I was watching it on my phone through YouTube. It was so scary to see that live. Like, seeing how good of a player Tua is and not thinking, like, I mean, it was quick that they cleared him, like you mentioned. It was so scary to see that, like, live. I'm like, the guy's just lying there. I'm like, what is going on? What are they doing? And the Dolphins, I'm going to make this comment right now. I'm not trying to sound like political at all. The Dolphins should be ashamed of themselves. Like, they let their star quarterback, which this is even more confusing. You drafted this man with the 5th pick, and you let him go out, technically not kind of showing concussion symptoms a little bit, onto the field, just letting himself, like, yeah, you can get hit again like that in the head. Sure. And he gets hit again, and then he's just lying on the ground. I'll make this comment now. It's inexcusable, but also to mention that now makes me defeated in Thursday night picks. That was my first L. But now to keep on with Tua, it's really shameful. But now they have to use Teddy Bridgewater, who I feel a former New York Jet for about 4 months. And it'll be interesting to see him play with the weapons that they have to offer in Miami. But it's especially the franchise that they have, it's more controversial than you think.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have much else to say. I mean, no, you pretty much hit the nail on the head. That was awful. He was having a very good season so far. Yeah, that was devastating to see. I'm not.
And, for a franchise like Miami, Robbie was kind of alluding to it somewhat. They've been under fire recently. The Brian Flores, saying how they were like trying to intentionally tank games. And that's another thing, too. They were saying that they were trying to intentionally tank games that season for Tua Tagovailoa. So obviously that's a guy who you invested so much in. I remember even back during like when that Dolphins were really, kind of in the bottom of the league, people were saying they were tanking for Tua. And finally you do get him. And that's how you treat him. I mean, I just think that's a bad situation all around. Miami also, the owner, Stephen Ross, got suspended, I believe. So, not a lot of good stuff going on there, at least organizationally with Miami. But I think that hopefully that, although that injury was horrific, hopefully we can never see that again. I hope that this situation, maybe leads to more positive change as to where we won't see a situation like that again. I remember that we're already seeing talks that the NFL is starting to make a new rule where if a player stumbles at any point after a head collision, they're out of the game immediately. And I think that that's going to start to be, kind of more of a positive change where hopefully we don't see a situation like Tua Tagovailoa again. It's like I said, the guy looks like luckily he's going to be good going forward, but obviously that could have gone different. So hopefully we see change in that regard.
So after all that, let's preview week 5 really quickly. Game of the week I want everyone to watch. It's a very interesting mix of games, but I'm going to go to one that is the Battle of the Birds in Arizona because I feel like Kyler Murray needs to prove himself still. And I feel like against the undefeated Eagles, I think he can possibly do it. It's an interesting matchup. Two teams that are well known for throwing the ball. Jalen Hurts has looked absolutely crazy. Like no one was expecting this, especially when they drafted him. They're like, yeah, he's going to be Taysom Hill for us. He's like 25 times better than Taysom Hill. Like he's been absolutely electric, leading this offense this team to 4-0. I do think they beat the Cardinals still, however, but I mean, Eagles, Cardinals, that's going to be a very fun game to watch. And one more game to watch, I'm going to go with Sunday Night Football, the battle of teams that you don't know what to think about them. The only losing for 14 seconds, Baltimore Ravens against Joe Burrow and the 2-2 Bengals. 2 weeks ago, they were 0-2. They figured it out. And it's going to be, they just beat, I mean, granted, they beat the Dolphins after like they just lost their starting quarterback in a horrific way, but it's gonna be interesting. A 50-50 game for sure. You want to pick Baltimore? I am picking Baltimore because I don't think they're gonna choke it for a third straight week. Third time's a charm for Baltimore. I think they do get it and they go back to over 500. Even though it'd be weird to say through 5 games that Joe Burrow would be under 500. Colin, what games do you like this week?
Well, I did want to talk a little bit about that Bengals Ravens game, and now since you did, I'm going to be somewhat, I guess you can call it biased here. Let's talk about the Giants Packers game in London. This is the first ever time, actually, in the 31 times that the NFL has played in London, that both teams have a winning record. Think about that. Now, both of these teams are 3-1, but many would argue that the wins have not been that impressive. The Packers, they beat obviously first string Bailey Zappi. The Giants won a game in which they had 84 total passing yards and still ended up winning that football game. I mean, I don't think that a prehistoric offense like that is not really going to work very often for you. But this game here is going to be really interesting because I think that, the Packers are expected to win this football game. I think they will win this football game. But if the Giants can make this somewhat contested here, the Giants can, make a statement really with this game. I think that kind of puts the league on notice to some degree. But yeah, really, if you're going to want to beat the Packers, you have to have more than 84 total passing yards. I mean, that kind of is really like just something you have to do. I mean, you can't avoid that. Another game that we could possibly look at is how about Cowboys Rams? Cooper Rush, can he keep his undefeated streak going? Because once again, Cooper Rush won, and playing the defending champion Rams, who really got pushed around by the San Francisco 49ers on Monday Night Football. I do think, however, that the Cooper Rush, fairy tale run sort of ends. I do think he's still going to have a good game, but I think the Rams bounced back after that tough game against the 49ers, and I think they do beat the Cowboys in Los Angeles. Chris, what are you looking at?
It's funny. I was literally going to say those two games. I'm not even kidding. I was literally going to say those two games. Giants, Packers, obviously, in London. NFL's been doing that for a while, but that could be that's definitely going to be a statement game from the Giants. And the Packers, obviously Aaron Rodgers wants to get back to the playoffs again. That's going to be a great matchup right there. And I think the, reigning Super Bowl champions against Cooper Rush's Dallas Cowboys is going to be also a pretty fun matchup. I guess if you want me to bring up like something else, I mean, those are really the only two I was looking
I'll
at.
bring up one more.
I guess like, in a way, I guess like Chargers, Browns, I guess, in a way, because Browns, I think both teams are trying to get back on top of their divisions, right? To
mention that
game,
game,
stay on top.
to mention that division, the Browns are trying to figure out themselves still with Jacoby Brissett.
Exactly.
They have looked not as good as people. I mean, granted, they don't have Deshaun Watson yet, but the Chargers, they have a very interesting team, and they're one of those teams that are like, yeah, we're 2-2. We should be 3-1 or 4-0. Like they are like, yeah, we should be this good. It's a very interesting team. But one more game before we pick up Thursday Night Football real quick. One more game I want to mention. Monday Night Football. Kansas City and Vegas. Both teams winning last week. Vegas, like a lot of teams in this league, trying to figure themselves out at 1-3. I think they're probably one of the better 1-3 teams in terms of roster, having Devontae Adams and all that. I do think Kansas City wins this game. Josh McDaniels, another coach that just seems to not know what he's doing at points. But quickly, we'll go to Thursday Night Football. A game, you can watch that game on Amazon Prime, by the way. Indianapolis and Denver. Two not fun teams to watch in a way, because the Broncos, they have Russell Wilson. They've done not much. And against an Indianapolis team that has made people sometimes probably fall asleep as a joke. But Denver and Indianapolis, I'm going with Denver. I think my Instagram poll, the Instagram poll did agree with that. We sent it out this morning. 77% of the vote went to the Broncos. So, yeah, I'll agree with Instagram. Again, I'm going to go with the Denver Broncos. Both teams are without their starting running backs. I don't care. I'm going with the Denver Broncos 23-10. Colin, who do you got?
So here we have the Peyton Manning Bowl. Both the two teams Peyton Manning played for, the Indianapolis Colts and the Denver Broncos. But I do think that the Broncos win the Peyton Manning Bowl this time around. Reason why is because, obviously the Broncos have had a lot of offensive struggles, but I think that the Colts are the perfect team as to where they can bounce back. You're playing at home on Thursday Night Football, under the bright lights. I think that Russell Wilson has a big game here. The Colts actually are last in the entire American Football Conference in point differential, and I think that's a big deal. Matt Ryan has not really been that, awe-inspiring. He has not had a great season up until this point, and I think that the Broncos have a good game on offense. I think this is where we start to maybe see the offense click a little bit. I'm not a big fan of Nathaniel Hackett. I'm still not a big fan of that hire, but I think the Broncos, with their talent, win this game against the Colts.
Yeah, same. I'm going to say it's by a score 28-7. Broncos win.
Well, unfortunately, guys, that is all the time we have for today For everyone watching, thank you for watching with us. For those who are going to be seeing us on YouTube, thank you for listening to our podcast. And for Colin, Chris, and myself, thank you guys for watching. We'll
Thanks,
see you guys
everyone.
next week.
Thank you.